Hey everyone, and welcome to the tutorial series for the Animal Behavior Kit. In this video, we're going to take a look at all of the steps that you need to do to migrate a fresh copy of the Animal Behavior Kit 1.3 into your own project. And there was a video before giving you the migration steps, but because the 1.3 update has so many changes, we needed to create a brand new guide, which is what you guys are seeing right here. And this is going to be the video that goes through all of the steps detailed here. So the first thing you should do is go ahead and look at the link on this video. There's going to be a link to this Google Docs. Open it up and follow along as we go through this step by step. Some of the stuff at the very beginning I've already done, and I'm going to show you anyway where it is. That way we speed up the video and it's not dragging along. But if you have any questions as you're following through, please make sure you leave a comment in the video. You can email me or you can reach me on Discord. But hopefully this should be literally everything you need to do step by step to migrate ABK to your project. So, all right. So first thing, again, I'm gonna move this in a second. But the first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna create a brand new ABK project and you're gonna open it. ABK downloads as its own separate project. So just go to your launcher, download it, and open it. And I've done the same thing here, and I've named my project ABK Fresh, and I literally just did this before the video. When you open it, you're gonna see that the level showcase is loaded, and you're gonna see the two folders here present. So you don't have to do anything, just go ahead and open it for now. And then if we go back to our instructions here, now we're going to open our current project. This is the project, your game, right, where you want to migrate ABK to. And we're going to do a few things here. So the first thing is we're going to enable the environment query system. And for our example, what I've done is I've downloaded the third person template from Epic Games. And again, like I said, I've done a few things, but my project is basically called ABK_migration YouTube. And there have been some small changes. For example, I changed the color of the original pawn to red. That way we can see that we're currently working with the appropriate pawn. So I've done this already, but assume that this is your fresh copy. You're going to click on edit, editor preferences, and then search for environment. And you're gonna see under AI environment query system. Make sure you go ahead and tick environment query system, and you can go ahead and close it. If it asks you to restart your editor, you can go ahead and do that. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and add all of the inputs from ABK. So go to your settings, project settings, and input. And what you're going to do is, if you open ABK fresh, right, your fresh project, and you go into your project settings, if you go into inputs, under action mappings, you'll see that we have a bunch of inputs here. Action, aim mode, command 1 through 5, crouch, etc. So your project may or may not have all of these inputs. So for this to work seamlessly, you want to make sure that you copy all of the settings exactly. You don't have to have the same key, but you do want to have the same name for each event. So you can keep this open, and then you can go to your own project. And we'll do the same thing. Go to settings, project settings, input, and you're going to add them by clicking on the plus sign. Now remember, I've already done this to speed up the video, but basically at this point, you would just click on the plus sign. You would start by saying action, and then you would assign a specific key. In this case, it would be E by default, but you can do whatever you want. And go ahead and add all of the different input items that you see here. The axis mapping should be pretty much the default for a third person character. So there's nothing really to do here. Everything is under the action mappings. Okay. All right. So assuming you did this, we have one more setting here before we close the project settings. We want to go to the collision settings, and we want to create a new object channel, and we're going to call it AI collision. And we're going to set the default response to overlap. And again, I've done this already, but let me show you where that is. So if you are here after you've done with all of your action mappings, go right here under collision, and you'll see that I have this already, but go to object channels, click on new object channel, name it AI underscore collision, and the default response should be overlap. Okay. And now, once you do that, now we're finally ready to migrate the ABK code into your own project. That's step number 3. So basically what you would do is you would go to your ABK project, you would right click on the content folder, and you'll select migrate. So if I go to my ABK fresh project here, you'll see that we have 2 folders. We don't want to select individual folders. We want to click on the content folder right here, right click, click on migrate, and it's going to give you basically saying, hey, literally everything here is going to be migrated. You click on OK, and then what you'll do, you'll see that I've done this before the video. You're going to navigate on your machine to your local project, in this case ABK Migration YouTube, and you're going to select the content folder. Once you do that, click select folder. I'm not going to do that because I've done it, and it'll go ahead and copy all of the files here. If you get a notice saying that some files already exist in your project, and it's going to ask you, do you want to overwrite them? You can go ahead and say no. Some of the files that I'm using here, like the generic cube, are part of the engine content, not ABK per se. So you can go ahead and say no. It still should work fine. So once you do that, and all of your files are copied, and you come over to your project, now you should see that you have all of your regular folders plus the advanced taming and the animal behavior kit folder, just like you saw on the fresh copy of ABK, right? So if we go back to our guide, we did this, and now it says we can go ahead and close the fresh ABK project. We don't need it right now, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Just close it here. And then now we need to make sure that we have the folders Animal Behavior Kit and Advanced Taming in our project, which we verified. And now we're finally going to start from number 7 right here. I'm going to start doing step by step on this video. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that everything migrated correctly. We want to go ahead and open the showcase level of ABK, and we want to use the ABK game mode as an override for that level to make sure that everything works. So if I go back to Unreal, if I click play right now, this is the standard third-person character level, and you can see that they have no functions. This is just the regular pawn. So we want to go to the Animal Behavior Kit folder here, go to Maps, open Level Showcase, which is right here, and give it a second to open. The navigation match is going to start building, which is fine. And because it is the first time, it's taken a little bit longer, but you can see that the level is loaded. And now, if we click play, the original pawn, our own pawn, is going to spawn. So we don't want that. We want to go here to World Settings. Under Game Mode Override, we're going to choose ABK Game Mode. That way, when we hit play, notice that the ABK character is the one that appears. The original character that we have, which is our own pawn, I made it red. In this case, the ABK character, which is white, is the one that spawns. And if I walk around here, you'll see that everything seems to work. The HUD is spawning, the little messages are there. I can sprint by pressing the shift key. Notice that the animals are reacting to me, meaning they're active because they're detecting me. So everything seems to work, right? If you want, you can go ahead and take the full tour. I'm not gonna do that, but basically what we wanted to confirm was that by migrating the project and using the ABK character, everything seems to work. Great. Now what we want to do is we want to transform our third-person character, which is this guy right here, which has nothing, to have all of the functionality of the ABK character. And that's really what's going to take the most amount of time. And we are going to add all of the functionality, including the advanced taming system, which includes, again, all of the taming components and the extra code needed to tame your animal. So again, what I'm going to do now is I am going to, again, step by step go through this. And I may move this to my second screen here, but just I'm going to keep telling you which step we're on so we know exactly where we are. So press play and confirm that the ABK character spawns and everything works. We just did that. And now we need to make our own character work with ABK. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to advanced taming, blueprints, characters, and we're going to open BP underscore ATS player character. So let's go back. And this is under advanced taming, by the way. Blueprints, characters, player, advanced, BP ATS player character. And this is the guy. I'm going to go back to the event graph here. This is the guy that has all of the code, as you can see here. And if I go to the viewport, you see that we have a lot of the different components here. Okay, so we've opened it, and now we're going to go back to our own player blueprint, and we're going to create a child blueprint class. And that is because we want to make sure that the ABK code and your own code are separate. And that's the best way of doing it. We don't want to be mixing the code. That way you can be sure that no matter what you do later on in your game, the ABK code is correct, right? So there's a few things that we can do here. If your own character has very little code, for example, say that this was my custom character, I have basically nothing, it would make more sense for me to create a child blueprint from the ABK character, create child blueprint class, and then add my own code. And that would basically make this pretty much work out of the box. But in this tutorial, I'm assuming that you already have a very complex character and you don't want to do that. So we're going to do it the reverse. So if I go back here to third person VP, blueprint, and I'm going to open my third person character blueprint, which is this guy right here, we're going to go ahead and start adding the code to this guy. So instead of using the actual third person character, which has this code here, I'm going to create a child of my current character, and I'm going to name this guy BP player, and I'm just going to name it player custom. Doesn't really matter what you name it, but this is going to be, so we know that this is the custom character that we have. And now notice if I go to the event graph, there's literally nothing there because that original code is part of the parent class. Okay? All right. So the first thing we'll do is right here, we're going to select the capsule component and make sure the collision is set to pawn. So let's go back. And again, on our custom player, we're going to go to the viewport, click on the capsule component, and let's make sure that the collision presets are set to pawn. That's important because the animals are going to be tracing for pawns, right? So that's fine. You don't have to do anything else. The character is set to pawn. Next step, which will be D, select the skeletal mesh and make sure that the collision is set to block all. So let's go back here, click on mesh, and here, notice that we have character mesh, and there's different settings here. We want to change this to block all, which means that even the trace visibility channel will be selected as block. Go ahead and compile and save. And we're going to go back here to our guide, and we're going to open our game mode, and we're going to add the new blueprint that we just created as the default pawn, and we want to make sure that we add the ATS HUD class as the default HUD class. So our game mode here, if I go back to Unreal, is going to be right here. This is called third person game mode, so I'm going to go ahead and open that. And notice that our default player class, default pawn class is third person character. We want to change that to player custom, which is the one we just created. And the HUD class, we want to change this to ATS HUD. Compile and save. And let's go back to our guide. Now we're going to open our player VP. This is the custom player, and we're going to add the tags ABK player and can engage as actor tags. So let's go back, open our player custom, select the top name here, it can be whatever, player custom, and then here on the details type tag just to search, and you'll see that we have a section here to add tags for the actor. Click on the plus sign, and we're going to add ABK player, and the spelling here is very important. ABK is lowercase, and then player with capital P, and then we're going to add another tag called can engage. Again, notice the spelling, very, very important. If you don't have that, then the animals are not going to detect you properly. So this is why I put it here in quotes and in bold. Now we're going to copy the collision sphere from our ATS character to our own character. So how do we do this? We go back to Unreal, and we can close the game mode here. We go to the ATS character here, and we see that we have a collision sphere, collision action. Click on copy, go back to your custom character, and you can paste. And you see that we have it named sphere. Let's change the name to collision sphere. It's very important that you keep the exact same name, because when we're copying the code, the nodes, the reference to collision sphere is going to work automatically if you keep the name. If you have a separate name, you're going to get some errors. So right now, let's just go ahead and do the exact same thing. We copy the collision sphere. Now we're going to copy the spawn anchor and name it correctly, and parent it to the mesh or weapon mesh. So depending on how you have it, I'm assuming you probably have a weapon, so you want to parent it to the weapon and adjust the location and set the rotation to 90 degrees. So let's go back to Unreal, go back to the ATS player character, and notice that we have this little sphere here we call spawn anchor. It's just basically a sphere, and it's parented to the gun. So when the gun moves, this little sphere is just going to be moving, right? So go ahead and do the same thing. Copy. We go to our custom character. In this case, we don't have a weapon, so we're going to paste it on the mesh. Click on paste. And actually, in this case, it just it pasted there. So grab it and go ahead and parent it to the mesh here. We're going to name it spawn anchor the same way. And we can reset the location here and the rotation. And now we can go ahead and move it anywhere we want. I'm just going to go ahead and put it around here. In the rotation in Z, we want the X-axis, the red, to be forward. So what we do here is we go to rotation and we make it 90 degrees. And now you see that the red arrow is pointing to the front. And again, that's important because the projectile is going to be launching from the X-axis, right? The front of the projectile is X. So we want the red to be facing forward on the character. Okay? All right. And now we can go and we can copy the components that you see for the character. So we're going to copy AI perception stimuli source, the player can tame, and the player HUD ATS. So let's go back here. And that may seem a little confusing, but it's basically these three components that you see here. We're just going to copy them. So AI perception stimuli source, we can just click here. Whoops. AI perception stimuli source. Then we can do player can tame, comp, and you can see it here, player can tame. And here, player HUD, even though the name is here, if you look at the class, right there in parentheses, this is the HUD ATS. So we're going to click on add component, and we're going to say player HUD, and we want to make sure that we choose the ATS version. right here. Go ahead and compile and save. Okay. Now we want to add the interfaces to the class settings. So there's a few interfaces that we're using to make sure that the character communicates with the animals and the taming system. So we go to class settings and we're going to add interfaces, and these are the interfaces: ATS player con for connection and ATS HUD access. So let's do that. And you'll see them here. If I go to class settings on the ATS character, you see them that we have the interfaces here. This ATS showcase is just done for a custom code that I have on the showcase level here. You don't really need it for your own character, which is why I say that you don't have to do it. If you want to be fully complete for everything in the showcase level to work, go ahead and add it as well. But we're going to focus on the important ones here. Player connection is the first one. Click on class settings, click on add, and type BPI. And you'll see that we have a few here. BPI player connection right here. Oops, so that's a mistake. We'll want to add the ATS player connection, not the regular one. So let's go ahead and click no here. And we want to type ATS, and we want BPI ATS player connection. Right here. BPI ATS player connection. And we want ATS HUD access. So let's just go ahead and add another one. ATS HUD access. Compile and save. And notice that as soon as we do that, under interfaces on the left hand side, we have a few functions here that come with the interfaces. You have 4: get aim mode, get spawn anchor, etc., which we're going to set up in just a second here. Okay, copy the interface. Now it says, okay, copy the code for the interface functions, which we just saw. Function get spawn anchor, get aim mode, get is falling, and get showcase crosshair state. We're gonna copy the code there. That's basically what I showed you guys here. So if we go here and we open the first one, get spawn anchor, we're gonna do that. So go back here and let's open get spawn anchor, and we're just gonna copy the nodes. Literally copy paste, and notice that everything just seems to work, right? And the reason for that is because spawn anchor is referring to this static mesh, has the same name as I had it here. This is why I was telling you to keep the same name. If the name was different, you would get an error here. Okay, get aim mode. Go ahead and copy that. Let's open get aim mode here. And you can just paste the variable. And in this case, this is going to be a brand new variable. So go ahead and right click and select create variable. But notice here that this variable is has these two little icons here. That means that the variable is replicated, and we want to choose rep notify as the replication settings here. So replication, rep notify, and we can compile. Then let's go to the next one, which is get is falling. We're going to copy the nodes here, and we're going to go here, get is falling, copy paste, compile. Every time you copy the code, make sure you compile and you're not getting any errors. That way we know that everything is working correctly. Finally, get show crosshair state. You can see it here. Let me just organize this a little bit better. And we are going to copy this code here. So right here, copy all of this code, and when you come to player custom, open this. We're going to copy it right here. And again, compile and save. Great. So we added the interfaces and we added the code for the 4 functions that appeared as part of the interface. We can go ahead and close these guys now. And we go back to the event graph. So let's go back to our guide here. And we were right here. Now we're going to go and copy the shoot graph. So every time it says collapse graph, I'll show you what that means. And we should do this in the order that is presented here. So let's go back and copy the shoot code. So go back to our characters here. And if we go to the ATS character, let's close this up right here. Let's go to the event graph. And here you're going to see that there's a bunch of collapsed graph. Those are the little squares that you see here. So we're going to grab the shoot graph. And if I double click here, you'll see that you have this code here. You can go ahead and just click on the collapse graph. And you can click Control C. And we're going to put it right here, Control V. And it copies all of the code inside. And let's rename it to shoot. And do not compile yet. When you go and open it, notice that we have a little error here. And that's normal because you're copying all of the code at the same time. So this little red arrow means that when you pasted the code, it did not realize that this event existed. So we're literally going to drag from here and we're going to type event server shoot, which notice is the event right here. So go ahead and delete this node. And notice that now we have aim mode, which you already created it. Let's take a quick look at the code. I don't see any issues here. So let's go ahead and compile and save. And now, if we press the fire button, we're going to go ahead and shoot. And we're going to use our follow camera as the direction. And we're going to be using our spawn anchor, which is what we just migrated, as the starting point to spawn the projectile. Okay. All right, so that's done. Compile and make sure there are no errors. We did that. And now we're going to copy all of the collapse graphs that we have below. And this step right here is pretty big. I'm basically saying, let's just go ahead and copy these graphs. And it doesn't really have to be in this order, but we're going to do it in the order. So go into each collapse graph and replace the events with the local events. That's what I just showed you with the red arrows that you saw. So let's go ahead and start one by one. Aim mode is going to be the first thing we're going to copy. Let's go back to Unreal. And right here, aim mode, copy. We're going to go back here. We're going to paste it right here. Take out the number 2. And when you come here, you'll see again the same issue with the red, right? So all we need to do is redo these events. So this is server set aim value. So start typing server set aim value. This is the actual local event. And you can just replace those right here. Delete the local event. Come right here. And then we have server aim mode. And as soon as you type it, you'll see that it appears. So we're going to, you can click Control. You'll get this little icon here. And you can grab a connection and change it to another node. That's really handy so you don't have to break it. And here you have client aim mode. And we're going to do the same thing. Control, grab this connection and set it here. And we're going to keep going down and we're going to replace these red arrows here. So this is aim mode. So call function aim mode. We're going to replace it here and you see this target is BP player custom, sorry. And again, this is the same thing. Aim mode, which is going to be right here. And if we scroll down, we see that we need to create this variable here. And we're going to create the variable. But let's go back to ATS, to aim mode here, and make sure that we are keeping, every time we create a variable, we want to make sure that we have the right settings for replication. So notice that we have no errors here. Aim mode and aim mode here. And then here we have this as set notify. Aim mode active is on notify. And that translated correctly here. But we had to create aim offset alpha. And here, if you click it, you'll see that this is marked as replicated. So we want to do the same thing. Go to replication, mark it as replicated, and we keep going down, and I think that's it. If we go to aim mode and we look at aim mode, we see that everything seems to be working correctly. So compile, save. Notice we got no errors. If you get an error, that means that you probably missed something. One of the events was not replaced correctly. So just go back and look at any errors that look red or any errors and correct them. But again, if you follow the guide in the exact order, which is what I'm doing, I've done it in a way that we minimize the errors that we get. Okay? So go back to the guide, and now let's copy the code for the graph take damage code. Same thing. So let's go back to Unreal and go back to the ATS character, again on the graph code, and we're going to look for the graph called take damage code, which you see right here. Just going to go ahead and copy it, and we're going to paste it right here. And again, I like to take that number 2 out. Do not compile yet. You got to open the event, and you're going to see the exact same thing here. So we got to recreate this event. So start typing event, took damage, and we want to say client. And now we're going to pass the damage and the damage causer right here, and we can delete this. And now when we come here, we notice that there are some variables that we need to create. So can take damage, go ahead and click on create variable. And we're going to go back to ATS just to make sure that we are creating the variables correctly. So can take damage is marked as replicated, and default is true. So let's go ahead and mark it as replicated. Click on compile. And I know that you got a few errors here, that's fine. Make sure that you mark can take damage to true. Current HP also needs to be created, so create the variable. And current HP is also replicated. So let's go ahead and mark it as replicated. And let's keep going here. And you notice that we have one more variable, actually 2 more, player HP created. And player HP is not replicated, that's fine. But we do have notify set player HP created, and set this as rep notify. So you can see here. Compile. Notice that we get no errors now. And this is important. This variable right here can take damage. If it's off by default, your animals will not do damage to you, right? This is basically a debug variable. So you can basically toggle on and off God mode, right? If you're testing your game, you can just disable this, say I cannot take damage, and no animals will do damage to you. And that way you can test. But if you create the variable, by default, it will be off. So make sure you select that as on. Let's go back and go back to our guide here. And notice that I said make sure that the current HP is replicated, and notify set player HP is marked as rep notify. For current HP, the value should be 20, and it could be anything. But we want to make sure that we add a value, because right now the player HP is 0, meaning that we're going to get one shot by the animals as soon as they do damage to us. So we probably want to have some kind of HP here. 20 is what I have by default in ABK. You can add whatever you want. And lastly, I said it here very clearly, but we're going to see it again. Set can take damage to true. Okay. Now let's go ahead and copy the chart, the graph, switch between baits. Let's go back to here. And we're going to look for switch between baits, which is right here. Control C, Control V, take the number 2 out. And by now you probably know exactly what it is. Open the graph and see if there are any glaring errors. In this case, you don't have to do anything, just compile. No errors, so everything's working. Go back to the guide. Shoot bait code is the next one. So let's go back to Unreal. Shoot bait code right here. Control C, Control V, and we're going to open the chart again, and no errors here. Compile. Everything seems to work. Okay. Event set companion name is the next one. So let's go back to Unreal, and right here, event set companion name. Copy it and paste it right here. And we're going to go ahead and open it. And here we find the little red arrows again. That is not a problem. So let's go ahead and create these events again. So drag server set comp name. And the new name is going to be connected here to companion name. You can delete this. Server comp set comp name. And then the same thing here. Multicast set comp name. And we're going to pass the companion name here. We're going to delete this. And the same thing here. Multicast set comp name. We're going to pass the name right here and delete it. And I think this looks all right. Let's go ahead and compile. And we get no errors. Great. All right. And now we're going to add BPI add bait. Okay. So let's go back to our ATS character. And you're going to see here under custom events, BPI add bait. Control C, Control V, and take out the 2 for good measure. Open it up, and you see that you get no errors. Click on compile, and click on save. This is related to the interface that we added earlier. So by pasting this node, you should have no issues whatsoever. But notice that this is an event that is coming from the one of the interfaces. All right, we're getting close. Now we want to copy the graph called character access and copy all of the code inside. That's the next step. That's a little trickier, but still pretty easy. So if you're here on ATS player character, right here under graphs, under event graph, notice that we have another graph called character access. I can double click here and I can see all this code here. We're going to do the same thing just to keep it easy. We're going to go to our custom player under graphs. We're going to click on the little plus sign here. And we're going to name it character. What was it? Character access, sorry. Let's rename that character access. All right, and now you see that we're in this character access chart graph, and there's nothing. So go ahead and copy all of the code in here. Copy, paste, and let's look for the little red arrows, which again you're going to see. So here we're going to toggle tame. Sorry, can't see. Toggle tame widget if player. Toggle tame widget if player right here. Toggle tame widget. Nope, this is wrong. This is the wrong event. Says start. So make sure that you do the right one. Toggle tame widget if player. This is the right one. Make sure that you have the right. This is one of those areas where you can mess up. Make sure it's the exact same event. And then notice that actor to check goes here and companion goes here. And you can go ahead and delete that. And this is basically calling this event right here. show HUD, we need to go ahead and create the variable. And if we go back here, show HUD is not replicated, so we're good. Every time you do that, make sure that you are checking the right variables. And if we go here, show HUD is there. Everything seems to be working correctly. All right, let's go ahead and compile. And now, before we leave, let's make sure that show HUD is marked as true. That way the HUD that shows you your health and your bait already appears. That's the HUD from ABK. If you disable this, it won't show the HUD. And notice that the default for show HUD is also true. Okay. All right, and it kind of tells you right here. Now we want to copy the graph can tame is the next step right here. So let's go back. And we can close this. Let's go back here. And the graph can tame, we're going to go ahead and copy it. And go to our custom character here. And we want to go to the event graph. And we're going to copy the node here, paste it here. Can tame. We're going to open it and we see the little red arrows again. So we got to be careful here and do the same thing. So this is going to be server show tame widget. So drag from here. Server show tame widget. And this actor, you can hold control, grab this guy and set it here. And you can delete this. And let's keep going down. And here you'll notice the same thing. Server hide tame widget. Whoops. Server hide tame widget. And you can grab the actor reference here with control and pass it along to this guy right here. Delete. And we're going to keep going down here and see if we have any other issues. We do right here. So we are going to again do the same thing. Client toggle tame widget. And the companion is coming from here, so you can go ahead and do this. And delete this guy right here. Client toggle tame widget. Yep. This is fine. And finally here, client hide tame widget. So again, client hide tame widget. And this guy is going to come right here to companion. And this guy is going to connect to companion reference. There you go. I think we're good. Let's go ahead and click on compile. And everything seems to be working correctly. All right. So far, so good. We have all of our events, no errors. Let's go back here. And now we're going to copy taming actions. And we're going to do the same thing. So taming actions, copy and paste. And we're going to disable that. Take out the 2. Open taming actions, and we're going to see if we have any errors here. Everything seems to work. All of the variables are created. All right. If we go back here and we open it, we see that it looks exactly the same. All right. Compile, save. All right, we're getting close, guys. All right, and now we're gonna copy the code attached to begin play on ATS, and that's gonna be the node, the graphs create HUD, set HP, and bind to take any damage. And that's pretty easy, right? So if we go back to our player, our ATS player, scroll all the way up and notice that we have a little sequence here with 3 different nodes attached to the begin play. So we want to go ahead and copy these nodes here, go to our custom character, and we're going to delete this here. And on begin play, we want to go ahead and paste this code right here. Don't compile yet. We got to go into each individual node and fix the potential errors here. So create HUD. I don't see any errors here, so it looks good. Set current HP. Again, it's looking good. And bind to take damage. And we're basically binding this event, our damage event, to the take any damage. And here, this collapse graph is basically telling the companion that its master received damage. And if the companion is set to aggressive, it'll automatically attack the target that is attacking its owner. So right here, everything seems fine. Let's go ahead and compile, and we get no errors. Awesome. I think we're good. Let's go back to our guide. And we already did this, but basically it says, hey, make sure that the variable show HUD is true. And finally, open the function onRep notify set player HP and copy the code inside. So if we go back here, notice that we have under custom, we have two new functions that have been created on the onRep notify. One is aim mode active and one is notify set player HP. So if we go back here and we look at onRep aim mode active, there really is nothing there, so you don't have to do anything there. But we do have some code on the notify set player HP. And we want to copy this code right here. So onRep notify set player HP, that's going to be a function. We're going to go to our custom character and open the exact same function. Here we're going to copy the code. And we're going to go ahead and compile. All right. And last but not least, obviously test that everything works. So if we did everything correctly, guys, we're crossing our fingers here. All of the functionality of ABK should now be migrated to your custom character. And remember, our custom character is red. So if we go to the showcase level here and we click play, we're going to get the ABK character, but that's because we're overriding our game mode. So let's go back to world settings and we're going to clear this. We don't want the game mode anymore. We want the default character to spawn from our third person game mode. And that default character is going to be, where is it? Sorry. Default player custom. Sorry. It was right there. So make sure that that is correct. And then now when we click play, notice that our custom character in red spawned. We do see the HUD right there. If we click on tab, we are switching between prey and predator bait. If we click on fire, oops. Oh, one more thing. See that we are firing, but there's something going on here. So the last thing we need to do, and I probably should add that to the guide, I forgot, is when we copy the spawn anchor, we want to make sure that we disable collision. And we put it a little bit farther so there is no, so it doesn't hit character. And this is custom collision, overlap everything. Let's click play again. Okay, and now you see that we're firing correctly. So make sure that your little sphere is far enough so when you spawn the projectile, you're not actually hitting the capsule component, otherwise you're going to see that error, and that there is no collision. So let's just walk around a little bit here. I'm going to maximize. Notice that we are getting the exact same messages. The animals seem to be reacting. If the animals don't detect the player, they're going to basically become invisible and become inactive. So the fact that we're seeing the animals walk around, it means that they are detecting the player correctly. All right, I'm not gonna spend too much time here on the video, but last thing we want to make sure is that we can tame the animals. So obviously go ahead and go through the entire level, make sure that everything works. I'm going to click on current camera location, click on play, and we're going to be in the companion section that you see right here. And I want to make sure that I can tame the animals. So when I approach this deer, Oops. Something is wrong here. So I think, let's see, player custom component. Player can tame. Player ATS HUD. All right, guys, let me see what's going on here. I'm going to pause the recording and see what we missed, and I'll be right back. Hey guys, I'm back. I went over all of the steps of the guide to make sure that I followed everything, and sure enough, we've went through all of the steps, but I did realize something, and I'm actually kind of glad that it happened while I'm recording the tutorial, because if it happens to you, now you know what's going on. So if you go to the custom character, right, this is the character that we've been working on. I noticed that the event on overlap for this collision sphere was not triggering for some reason. And then if I select the collision sphere and I go all the way down in the details panel, I notice that the actual event begin and end overlap were not actually there. Even though if we go under can tame, you see that we do have the event here for collision, action, begin overlap, and end overlap. Which means that when we copied the node, this blueprint didn't really make the connection that this collision action was this. And notice that and the reason is because of the name. We have collision action versus collision sphere. That's the reason. We didn't name it properly. And when we copied the node, it didn't really have the right connection. So notice now what happens if I come here and I say, okay, begin overlap, and I create the event, and I go back here and I create the end overlap event. Now we have these guys here. I'm going to go ahead and cut them, come back to can tame, paste them here, and I'm going to replace them. And that was the issue. The naming issue that I kept talking about created this problem here. So I'm going to go ahead and replace the old one, which had collision action, with the one that says collision sphere, and make sure that we replace it correctly, other actor. If you don't have this problem, you probably named it correctly. That was my mistake. And now when we go back to make sure that we don't overwrite, when we go back to the showcase level, and this is our custom pawn, when I get close to the deer, now you see that you have the tame option appear. You click action, and now you see that we have the companion. So that was the issue. If you follow the guide step by step, you should be fine. If you make the mistake and something's not working, this is what happened to me. Remember that the naming of these elements is important. I named it incorrectly, and that was the reason why we had that problem. So collision action versus collision sphere, which is why I had that issue. Anyway, that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions, leave a comment in the video. Please do follow the guide step by step. Hopefully you have a smooth experience, unlike me. And thank you guys so much again for your support. Reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you in the next video.